Hello, in today's live stream I'm going to have my first go at talking about whether dyscalculia can be prevented and cured. Now, from the discussions I've had on Facebook recently, that is clearly a trigger thing to claim. And yet, it is the world I've been living in for the last 8 years. It does seem that in primary schools, and in primary schools only, I am only claiming this up to about the age of 10, and I've plenty of experience of working beyond that, and I know how hard it is. But in primary schools, we seem to be able to prevent and fix dyscalculia in all children. Now, I must pause and define dyscalculia. I've got a definition here that mirrors dyslexia. I've got it defined as someone who faces extreme challenges in working with numbers despite otherwise normal intelligence. So I am not claiming that we can fix every child if they've got, substantial multiple learning difficulties, if they've got a degree of brain damage that's impacting on their ability to learn all skills, then obviously we can't fix that. We have been able to help a lot of children with challenges well beyond just having challenges in number, but there are limits. So why am I putting this out there? Well, the first is because I know we have a lot of good practice that I'm trying to share because I want to help. But the second is for criticism. I need to explain what we're doing so people can come back to me and say, well, actually, Rebecca, I think what you're suggesting wouldn't meet the needs of this kind of child in this situation, or I've tried it and it hasn't worked. I have tried to get funding for research in the schools. I applied to, in the UK, it's the EEF funding. I've applied for that and I've not been able to get it. So all I can do is explain what we've been doing, explain what the consequences have been, and ask you to engage and give some feedback and hopefully find it interesting and helpful. And if not, then please tell us why. So clearly one of the big problems that's caused the explosion in dyscalculia is that we are teaching stuff far too young. A lot of children are not properly ready to learn until about the age of 7. So by teaching core curriculum at the age of 4, which is what we do in England, we're compounding the problems, and it makes it all much more confusing and much more difficult to work with. Hello, if you want to ask a question, you're really welcome. But I'm not saying that you can change that. We have to work with it as it is. And one of the reasons it's quite good that I'm broadcasting this from England is that we have the worst policy environment in the world. It's all driven by one man who doesn't believe that age matters for learning. So our children learn the numbers to 20 at the age of 4 and move on to the numbers to 100 at the age of 5. Hurrah! And we've just worked with the reality of that. And that is what we're doing. So given that that's what we're doing, how do we prevent dyscalculia? So hopefully coming back from the most extreme environment in the world, it will help you even if you're in a very toxic policy environment, which is driven by politicians who don't understand children at all. So how have we done it? Well, I think there's 3 things. One is the deliberate teaching of the key structures and the big ideas of maths in a way that I've not seen done anywhere else as thoroughly. So teachers, instead of teaching mathematical methods and adding apparatus in, they teach deep structure of maths. And I talk about there being 8 deep structures of maths. We have to get them going with the cardinality of number before we teach them anything else. They have to know the 4-ness of 4. That 4 is a set of 4 objects. It's not the 4th thing. And sometimes when children access school, they don't really know that, and learning hammers on ahead and they're lost from the very beginning. And children have never understood maths, and they've sat there an hour a day throughout primary school, always having been miles behind because we didn't set up that one. The second one is the structure of 5s and 1s that's in the fingers and toes, so children can instantly recognise number. The third is the part-whole model of addition and subtraction, and we talk a lot about integrating those models, part-whole, and the structures of 5s and 1s, and then the structure of the counting beads. and the model of array, and I have a video going live on that. I'm teaching that to 6-year-olds. That's going live at 9:30. And array, whereas part whole is the structure that underpins addition and subtraction, array underpins and knits together multiplication and division. Then we have deliberate teaching of the number line, which a lot of people don't realise quite how difficult that is. Deliberate teaching of base 10 apparatus, which can be your deans, or it can be arrow cards, or it can be place value counters, but it's deliberately taught. And it's taught in a multi-sensorial way for as long as it needs to be. And then we have the proportion bar and the circular proportion, all deliberately taught, and all the mathematical concepts flow out from there. So that's part of it. We teach the maps of maths before we teach the methods, deliberately teach it, hook it all in. So that helps. That's the first part, is the way that we teach. And then as we go into upper primary, it's all low floor, high ceiling teaching. So every child can access the lesson, even if they've got huge gaps in their learning. And all of that is now laid out on my channel. All the topics of primary are covered and how that is done. So just go to videos, or if you go to authenticmaths.co.uk/videos, you see the whole list of the videos and you can find exactly what you're looking for. So that's the first part of it, is the teaching. The second is the intervention. So teachers have to be very, very in touch with precisely what their children are and aren't understanding, and they have to be trained to intervene. So if a child, they might miss a year because they've had an operation or been seriously ill. If they have that, the teacher, it's essential they know what to do, they know what to check. One of the key things that children often miss when I'm diagnosing and teaching teachers to diagnose children who've got problems, who need intervention, is the subordination of partitioning. So a lot of children learn to subordinate partitioning, which means partitioning is like splitting the number 8 into 5 and 3 and using that in a higher level skill without realising you're doing it, pretty much. So if you had a question like 57 add 8, the child who's subordinating partitioning would add 3 to get to 60 and know they've got 5 left, so the answer is 65. If you want that explained in more detail, look at the video on counting beads, which I published recently, or there's a special series 2, age 7 to 11. It's called Fast Addition and Subtraction. I don't talk about the name because I'm not trying to confuse parents who I'm including in that video, but fast addition and subtraction is what it is. So that's one of the strategies that I teach to teachers to diagnose the children who need intervention. And that fast addition and subtraction video explains the intervention that's needed to make sure all children acquire that skill that's necessary for calculating quickly and being free to focus on the more complex calculations, so you can really engage with them and you're not being weighed down by because you're still counting on or back one at a time. So we deliberately teach that to children through interventions. But we need to train, so I've got teachers who are trained to do interventions. Parents can also intervene. If you look for my series, the Orange series, series 1, it really explains the journey as a parent, which is very different because you can cuddle your child and you can intervene in small bits here and there because you see them so much. And that runs on into the series 2, which covers things like the subordination of partitioning. So that series 2 covers all of number age 7 to 9 and how a parent can teach that to their child in ways that are going to work, even if their child has severe problems in learning number and is miles behind. The other people, once a teacher is diagnosed, it might be a tutor or a teaching assistant who then intervenes with the child to create the extra time that's needed to help that child catch up. And unfortunately, I did write the British resources for that on what we call the NCETM website, National Centre for Excellence in Teaching and Maths. And sadly, it was deleted recently. It was written in 2010, so they've updated the website. But when you're working with a child in pre-planned time and you're not the parent, you're not close to the child, the strategies you need are different. And we talk about needing many, many strings to your bow because the child is going to defeat you. they're going to reject some of the strategies you use just because they've got their barriers up and they're used to failing and they want to be in control of failing. So we talk about using apparatus, asking the child to go back to calculations they could do, getting children to explain to each other. There's strategies in there like getting the child to pretend that there's someone in the class who can do it, which startlingly works. Much more than you would believe is possible, but with young children these things happen. So I need to redo all that and get that live on this channel. It's not there yet, but it is part of this culture of sorting children out. So I need to explain that that exists too for the teaching assistant and the tutor. So the first is the way we teach, which is deliberately teach the structures and the core concepts like subordinating, partitioning, and use low floor, high ceiling teaching. The second is the interventions. So from age 7 to 11, teachers are constantly watching for the children who are struggling. They know why they're struggling and they know how to fix it. And there are other people who might intervene as well. But the third are the physical interventions, because there are reasons why some children struggle to learn. And I was in an amazing session with Sue Gifford yesterday. Sue wrote most of these books on early years. There you go. There's one. And she's quoted in the vast majority of the others. And she talks a lot about how children are going to struggle to learn if they don't know their position in space and they haven't got spatial recognition, spatial coordination. So she recommends the traditional ways of maths teaching, which are lots of work on position, shape and space. She talked about how children who commando crawl get it better because they're coordinating their body and exploring space as they do that. Now that links in parallel to the work of Charlotte Davis, who I've got an interview with on this channel. And away from the world of maths education, in the world of neurology and the things that are possible now with brain scanning, they've reached the same conclusions, but they've got more depth and technical expertise on them. And what they've found is that children who are struggling with number are usually not properly coordinating their sensory inputs. So their eyes aren't coordinated yet. They can't properly see in 3D. And often their auditory inputs aren't coordinated with their visual inputs. So there's a lot of work that can be done now to specifically track that. When children are trying to do activities, you can use scanners to track their eyes and see if they're coordinated or not. And there's specific exercises that can be done. So what I'm saying is that I've seen schools that understand this stage of development and are working. Charlotte's book here, where's it gone? The Maze of Learning. Here we go. This is enough for the vast majority of children. Maze of Learning, Developing Motor Skills. And I've seen schools that are using these exercises, things like snow angels, to check which children have got multi-sensorial coordination and which haven't, and to do suitable interventions. So this is having a huge impact. But there are some children who've got more profound issues than that and need a bit of extra support. And Charlotte is sharing a lot of the information on how to achieve that on her Fit to Learn YouTube page, which is Fit, F-I-T, 2 as a number, and then learn as the word. And what she's sharing there is phenomenal. She's an amazing woman. And it'll give some people insight that there are ways of fixing real neurological barriers to learning that didn't exist 10 years ago and maybe don't exist in your area. But Charlotte is there on her YouTube channel, and you can chat to her in the questions, and you can book consultations with her if you've got a child with extreme profound difficulties despite all of this other stuff. And a lot of the recommendations are in the videos, but some of them do need specialist treatment. But again, the specialist will often only actually be recommending the exercises that are in these books. So that's how we've been doing it. The first is teaching all the structures first and the deep concepts like the subordination of partitioning in a multi-sensorial way, teaching it deliberately and hooking all the rest of the maths into that. So children can learn despite the barriers that they're facing to learning, because the multi-sensorial route to learning helps them get around those barriers, and the deliberate teaching of structure gives everybody understanding. If you don't deliberately teach structure, some children puzzle it out anyway, often without even being aware what they're doing, despite not having been taught it. But your children who have barriers to learning often don't. And that's the specific things there that we need to fix. I do find a lot of the children I work with, and I have always taken on the most challenging children and have looked for them. And whenever people say, oh, nobody can help my child, bring them to me. And we found they've often had hearing problems as younger children, which is one of the reasons they've had huge gaps in their learning that have been debilitating and have stopped them engaging in maths and ever becoming confident with it. So they start to put up the psychological barriers. But up to the age of certainly 10, I've had those children around to my house once, possibly twice, with their parents. And that's it, to sort them out. I have apparatus all around the room, and I let them play with it and ask them some little questions and can watch what they do. And I can see exactly which specific gaps they've got in their learning and help their parents see that too and recommend some games. And that's it, basically. And then the schools are able to help the child and reach the child because specific things have been fixed, and the schools can then get down to the level of the child and bring them through. Especially if they're schools that I've been working with, which they often are. Because if I go into a school and work with the staff, they sometimes say, look, I've got this child who's 9 and he's miles behind and I'm not sure I can do this on my own, so can you help, please? So I'll see them just to help turn that school around. Those children won't occur in the future because they'll have been taught better because the teachers have then been through the training. So if all that stuff is now free shared, if you just want to ask me anything, please do in the questions to the video. And if you are convinced that you've got cases that don't respond to all of this, then please tell me, because I want to know, I want to understand. And if anyone's got access to any research budgets where we could do this on trial in schools, and a way of funding research to check my claims, I'd be hugely grateful. Okay, hopefully that'll kick off an interesting discussion. Bye for now.